Hello, welcome back to Thriving. Ke nna Lerato, mosetsana wa lerapo la phala e reng e tlola tsela go sale le go lefela o tla mpona ke ile. Happy to be back recording yet another episode of Thriving, a place and a space where we amplify voices of people who choose to thrive because of or in spite of the circumstances in their lives. I'm excited today. Hey, Bana. You know, it's that year as GIBS. We're turning 25, right? We're celebrating awesomeness, and we're also still thinking we're going to create more awesomeness. But I'm excited that my guest here, he also epitomizes awesomeness. Uspicho, if you don't know him, I ulele somewhere, I don't know where. But you're going to catch a wake up because we're going to have a good conversation. My guest today is Siphiwe Moyo. He's the executive director of the Organisational Behaviour Institute, a visionary leader with over 2 decades of experience in organizational behavior. His expertise is in diagnosing and addressing organizational issues in service of transforming dysfunctional teams and helping organizations perform at their highest. His profound understanding of human behavior within a workplace has made him a trusted advisor to numerous organizations seeking to enhance performance and effectiveness. Siphiwe is a lecturer. He's lectured at GIBS, and he uses his message to help organizations address some of the complexities and empowers them to drive meaningful change within their respective organizations. Siphiwe is also a speaker. Siphiwe is also my mentor in the game of speaking. So I look forward to this conversation, Spicho. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Lerato. I didn't know about the mentor part.
You didn't know about the mentor part?
I didn't know about that.
Well, now you formally know about it.
Thanks for having me.
I'll take off my glasses. I needed them to just be able to read. Sure. Spicho, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come chat to us. As a school, we want to drive environments that are humane-centered in their approach. But as employees, 2 years ago, we decided that we wanted to set up a platform where we could have conversations that help people in a context where people are disheartened, where there's othering, where there are real economic and social pressures out there. The narrative can quickly become narrative that is negative. And we wanted a space where we could actually say, no, there are people who, despite that, choose to thrive. So look forward to you sharing your thriving story with us today.
That's great. No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sure.
Sure.
What is your thriving story? So maybe let's start with, how do you define thriving as Siphiwe?
I define thriving in ways that, you know, when you feel centered, when you feel like in your life there is more positive emotion than negative, not because negative emotions are always wrong, but the ratio is leaning towards positive emotions. When I feel like I'm doing work that allows me to flow, when my relationships are sound, particularly at work, but also in my social circles. And it took me a while to actually realize how important the other parts, like relationships, the other parts like meaning and so on. And it took a time where I didn't have that to know that this is a big component of thriving.
Sure.
Because you're growing up, and when I'm growing up in Soweto and in Orange Farm, what I really want is just success. I want achievement, I want accomplishment. I know where I want to go. I'm really, really driven to succeed. And at that time, for me, I think I'm not thriving. I think, you know, my life is really, really terrible. It will only get better when I get the money. Once I have money, I'll never be sad ever again. And then, for some weird reason, I'm removed from a community. Probably 2014, 2015. I leave my entire community and I start feeling empty. And it's weird because I think we're on holiday with my family in beautiful Zanzibar. I'm excited. I'm ticking the right boxes. When we come back, my wife says to me, yes, dude, you were annoying, you were grumpy, you ruined the holiday for everyone.
What happened?
first, I am hoping we shouldn't be that candid.
Yes.
But after that, I had to dig deep to say there's a lot of things I've lost. I've lost a community, and I didn't know how important that is. I lost a sense of meaning because when I was closer to Orange Farm, I would do this learnership. I would do these sessions where we expose people to learnership and apprenticeships. I didn't know how important that was to me, not for other people, to me. And it was that search for me that really gave me, I guess, a broader view of what thriving actually means. That it's really not about one aspect of your life, but it includes a variety of things. That when you get a bit of equilibrium in all of those things, then you are thriving.
You are thriving. Oh, that's wonderful. So we are a learning institution, obviously, so we have to be research-based. Yes. And so some of what you're hitting on is also hitting on what we've learned so far, right? That it's anchored in meaning, it's anchored in community to a certain extent. Some of our speakers have talked about, I'm less thriving when I'm not feeling connected to the community. But you're also adding another one in terms of it's not just having the social relations, it's actually doing something. And when you're not doing those things for the community, you feel like there's a part of me that is missing. And then it starts impacting, as you said, even your holidays. I'm glad there was that candidness, right? Because it also was an invitation to you to then, look inside at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
When were there moments where you were like, okay, I'm really not thriving in a particular time, especially because we're in a work context? And how did you navigate that space and maybe share some of the lessons that help? Because the one thing that we also learned was it's not that there's a continuum to thriving.
Yes.
And that you can be thriving in one area and not thriving in another. Yes. So you shouldn't give up and then say, my life sucks, type of thing. So talk us through when you did have a less thriving experience. What did you learn?
It's exactly that time. So for me, this was a big moment. So I come back from this holiday, I go to therapy. And the therapist introduces me to some interesting activity, which at that time I just thought, this is a bit boring, it's mundane, and it's meaningless. So they say to me, just go home, write 3 things that you are grateful for 21 days, come see me after. When I do that, when you do something begrudgingly and you think, oh God, I'm grateful for life and so on. And then something really, really hits me at that time, that there is a big portion of my life that I've really, really missed. So the things around giving back, the things around what does meaning mean for me, but also just this concept of the hedonic treadmill, which is the idea that you chase and you chase and you chase, and many of us keep shifting the goalpost on what success is. You think to yourself, I'll be happy when I get this. And then when you get it, you keep shifting the goalpost, which is why many people, you've achieved so much, but you are empty, right? And it's a weird thing. I think the technical term for it's hedonic adaptation, that we adapt to the good things in our lives and we no longer see them. So for me, then this exercise forces me to pause and realize what I already have, as opposed to chasing the next goal. And that changed the game for me. I really discovered that the power of gratitude, the power of reframing, even some of the things I was doing, to just say, wow, I get to do this, as opposed to I have to do
it. Yes.
And that was a time for me that I was really not thriving. And just being intentional about reflecting at the end of the day and writing these 3 things that I'm grateful for. But also, I got into weird things that I never thought I would have to do. I remember reading this book about play, because I'm like, why am I searching these things? I now have to think intentional about getting things like play back into my life, because I'm just trapped and just working and thinking about what are some of the wonders that I'm noticing again on my route to and from work. And I just realized that we get caught up in the things that we have to achieve to a point that we no longer see the things that we already have. And unfortunately, that takes away so much from us. One of the reasons we really don't experience authentic happiness and thriving is not because there's something missing that you must get. It's just because I'm also not noticing the things that I have. And just pausing for me really, really helped me to just tap into that and understand that, oof, I've done so much and I've done well. And a little bit of self-congratulation, because also people find it so weird to just pause and say, I've come a long way. And all those little things, which I guess all of them fall in the category of savoring. Really, really, the idea of savoring really, really changed my life.
Your life, yes. I've heard you talk about savoring before, and it's such an important principle. So again, you're reminding us of, in spite of the circumstances, there is so much that you already are and have already done. But do you take the time to actually recognize what it is, right? So I like that idea of practicing gratitude. And you said earlier the importance of positive emotions and having more of that than the negative emotions. The one thing that you're hitting on is the intentionality element. And again, when we're doing our research for thriving, we found it becomes such an important thing to be intentional. Whether it's intentional about your development, which is part of the definition of thriving, but intentional about also keeping your sense of vitality and feeling healthy and like you can take things on at the end of the day. And I think spending time in that gratitude space can actually help gird you up and energize you again to be able to tackle the next thing, right?
Absolutely. And relationships, I cannot emphasize relationships enough. You know, one of the interesting things about positive relationships in our lives is that most of the time, particularly after COVID, most of us had gotten used to, I guess, sitting at home and being alone, and we thought that was the best thing for us. But it turns out we really need other human beings. In fact, I think there's this longitudinal study that they did, which always fascinates me. They followed people for 8 years, and they're trying to figure out at which point in their life they were the most content. And of course, there were certain spikes at any given time. After a promotion, you get a spike, but it corrects because, again, hedonic adaptation. But the most sustained one was when you have really positive positive relationships as well in your life, but you're also just intentional about looking at your life holistically. Even how you detach from work, because I also think many of us, even when we're not at work, we're still at work. You know, how you need to be intentional about what kind of rest are you actually having. Does it aid psychological detachment? Because sitting and watching TV for 2-3 hours every day is actually not helping you thrive. So all of a sudden, I'm getting used to these nature walks, search for tranquility, and all of those things that really, really ground us and make us able to, even when you detach, you know that leaders who know how to rest, and I argue that leaders actually should also be interested in how people in our teams rest, because the way people rest will tell us a lot about how they show up maybe in the next week or so.
Sure. So we must be resting, sleeping well. We must be out in nature. Being a couch potato looking at the TV may not be serving you as well as you think it may be serving you.
Absolutely.
Very good pointers. And I like the fact that they're practical, right? Because I think sometimes when you've overcome an area or you've achieved, then people want what you have, but then they're like, how did you get there? So I'm enjoying the fact that actually these are practical things that we can be doing. You know, be out in nature, take a walk at the end of the day. But your provocation around how leaders rest, but also how they should be interested in how their people rest. I think I want to use that as a segue to, you write books, and you write books about organizations and how they can become more effective. And your recent one is called Building Better Workplaces, right? I must say, we are enjoying using this book as a team. It's written in a way that just aids quick, good reflection for leaders and teams. And we've used it to say, okay, fine, chapter 1 talks about values. How are we living these values? How are they helping us make decisions? And how are they helping us to act in a different way? So I would say if there is a book that is useful, that is easy to read, because I know it takes a while to read books, this is one of them. When you wrote this, you said you were writing it for leaders.
Yes.
Not just the people in the people profession.
Yes. My passion right now is really building better workplaces. I just think people are starting to have a very weird and wrong relationship with their work. And work is a big component of thriving. In fact, there's researchers who literally think about what does thriving at work actually mean. And it's very important. We spend so much of our time at work. And you know what I found as I was writing the book is that most of the challenges we have in teams, they are also quite retaliatory in nature. So I did something, I didn't invite you to this meeting, you are sulking, you don't invite me back, but I also don't know. And now trust is broken, there's internal competition, but we're not able to have a conversation to say, what are some of the few things that we can do to improve our team? And so when I was writing the book, the intention was to write a few chapters that will then aid the conversation. Short, sharp, show a bit of research on what does this mean, what does it mean to live the values, and then open up a conversation and say, are we currently living the values? What would it look like if we were living the values? And so I think those conversations are important. But unfortunately, on a normal Tuesday, we're all busy with emails and projects and deliverables. Kind regards. We never really have conversation. In fact, people don't even know how to have conversations. They always go to the extreme. It's either it's aggression or it's artificial harmony because they don't really know how to have, I think about them as feedback and conversations that are both candid but filled with care. With, you know, that balance between care and candor for me is very, very important. And so many people are not able to have conversations about things that really, really matter. That will still aid a lot of accountability in team members, but also create that elusive, actually not elusive, but just the psychological safety in the team. And what I find is that generally you find a human-centered leader who comes with really great intentions, but their team members are not mature enough to understand that this person still needs performance. They slack and they don't do work, and that person moves to the other extreme. Because at the end of the day, they still need to deliver. Correct. But if we're able to have those conversations, it just becomes much better for everybody.
How does that look practically, though? If you were to speak to a leader, because I mean, I get we need to do individual work to help ourselves in terms of our journey of thriving. But how does it look like for a leader who's trying to create an environment that, as you say, is filled with candor, but is also caring, not but, and is also caring? What can they do?
There's a few things you can do, and one of them is just to create or use the meeting that you have a little bit differently. So if you're having a weekly meeting, for example, and that's very task orientated, we're ticking box, have one meeting, maybe just 1 month, where it's a check-in meeting. And in this one meeting, it's totally reflection based. How are we doing? What would thriving look like for our team? If we had permission to change one thing that would make us better, what would it be? And that 1 hour, you are comfortable with silence. You ask that question, you keep quiet. And eventually people dig deep. Eventually people will talk. Initially people, what we want to see, they would really want to see whether there's real intent for you to do this, because people, unfortunately, they've been hurt before. But as you consistently do that, as you ask the question, step back and listen, you will see people being able to do that. But I don't think it's something you can fit into a normal agenda. Because generally you have a lot of tasks. Just a 1 hour meeting, 30 minutes meeting, that is just literally based on how we're doing as a team. There's a lot of frameworks that you can use for that as well, because how you ask that question is so important. It needs to be like nice and open-ended. It sets the tone, but you need to get people used to the idea that we actually have a space to reflect here.
Yeah.
And that space, we're not going to try and fill it in. We're going to sit with that question, as uncomfortable as it is. We're going to sit with it. We're going to get that feedback. And what we do with that feedback is going to determine whether people can still be honest or not.
Yeah.
If they feel like we've used this space to victimize, obviously people are going to go back
They're going to shut down
they're going to shut down again.
Yeah.
But it's very possible. And what I think is also great about this is it also gives you permission as a leader to also mention your fears, to also say, you know, one of my fears is that if I become relational, I'm going to struggle with demanding performance. How can you help me with that? And you find that people can then also help you with that, because as long as we're having these conversations with ourselves and like, okay, I need to close the space, it's cold at the top, I can't relate, which is driven by fear.
They can unlock thriving. Those
They lock thriving.
Yeah.
And but you have all this pressure to solve these things. Some of your people have solutions. All they want is a really great environment to help you to bring those solutions, and those kind of meetings help.
Lovely. I told you that we were going to have a good conversation. I hope I wasn't lying. I am edified. I keep learning a lot every time I am talking to Siphiwe. But that's the invitation to our leaders around how we can create more thriving experiences for our employees. Take time, take the meetings that already exist, but be intentional about using them for a different agenda. Think about the question you want to frame, because it also allows everybody else to have permission to be, to dig deep, to thoughtfully bring their truths to the table. And as Siphiwe also says, don't be uncomfortable with your own vulnerability in those conversations, because again, they can unlock deep, meaningful conversations that help you together with your team to create the kind of environment that you want. Environments that are thriving. Siphiwe, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experiences. I look forward to workplaces that change because leaders choose to do different things, practical things.
Very practical.
That connect with the heads and the hearts of their people.
Thanks for having me, Lerato.
And as we said, we have one song that connects us with Siphiwe. So when we were setting up this video, this podcast, we were like, we're tired of people just being negative about kind regards. We wanted them to really enjoy work again. And Siphiwe's thing is work doesn't have to be a drag. And so our song is the Msaki song. Yeah. She says, fetch your life. Go fetch yours.